In 1981, under the bright lights of Los Angeles, a man wiped gasoline from the floor of a service station and looked out at a world he didn't yet belong to. His name was Won Chang, an immigrant from South Korea, a janitor by night, a dreamer by faith. He couldn't speak English, couldn't afford a car, couldn't even call America home. But he believed that struggle was not punishment. It was preparation. By day he delivered coffee. By night he scrubbed floors. In between, he prayed. He watched the wealthy men who stopped to refuel their cars and wondered, what did they do that I don't? He had no idea that one day his name would hang on storefronts in hundreds of cities on the bright yellow sign that read, Forever 21. His story defied every logic of business. He had no investors, no education, no plan, only conviction. Faith was his capital, work was his language. In a land that worshipped speed, he moved with patience. In a culture that prized ambition, he chose humility. He didn't chase fashion. He chased opportunity not to become rich, but to prove that hard work guided by belief could create miracles. Years later, when asked about the secret to his success, he said softly, I didn't build this alone. God built it through me. He came to America with nothing in his hands, but everything in his heart. So who is Won Chang, really? A businessman, a believer, a survivor of the American dream. He swept floors for a living and built an empire for eternity. A man who stitched faith into fabric and turned prayer into prosperity. Long before the neon lights and the crowded shopping malls, there was a boy walking through the narrow alleys of post-war Seoul carrying more hope than possessions. Won Chang was born in 1954, in a Korea still recovering from ashes. His family was poor, not by choice, but by geography. A nation rebuilding a generation taught that survival was success. His father worked small jobs. His mother kept faith alive at the dinner table, even when there wasn't much to eat. In that world, humility wasn't a virtue, it was oxygen. He grew up learning that hands were meant to work, not to wait. He saw neighbors sharing what little they had, churches offering warmth when money couldn't. It was there among the modest pews and wooden floors that Won discovered his first and greatest strength, faith. Not the kind written in books, but the kind tested by hunger. As a young man, he was quiet, disciplined, always watching. He never dreamed of luxury. He dreamed of stability, of one day giving his parents a life free from struggle. After graduating high school, he took odd jobs from delivery clerk to assistant salesman. Each paycheck went to his family. Each failure taught him something deeper than profit, patience. In his early 20s, he met Jin Suk, a spirited young hairdresser with sharp eyes and unshakable faith. Where he was reserved, she was resolute. They shared one belief that God rewards persistence. Together, they dreamed of building something not for fame, but for purpose. When they married, their wedding was simple. Their promise was not. In 1981, South Korea was changing fast, but opportunity felt far away for people like them. So with little English and even less money, they sold what they could, borrowed from friends, and boarded a plane to Los Angeles. $11,000 and a handful of prayers. That was everything they owned. They landed in a world they didn't understand. The streets were wide, the voices unfamiliar, the air heavy with both fear and possibility. Won found work wherever he could, washing windows, brewing coffee, mopping gas station floors. Jin Suk worked long hours in a salon, her hands aching from scissors, her mind fixed on hope. They slept in a one-bedroom apartment so small that dreams had to share space with exhaustion. But every morning before sunrise they prayed. Every night before sleep they thanked God, not for what they had, but for what they still believed was possible. The neighbors saw a struggling couple. They saw seeds in the soil. Faith became their compass. Hard work became their rhythm. And even as the world around them rushed by in noise and color, they built their lives slowly, deliberately, with reverence for every small victory. Every bill paid, every customer smiled, at every day survived. In a city obsessed with glamour, they learned something more powerful than beauty. They learned grace. He wasn't chasing the American dream, he was surviving it. And in that survival, in that quiet persistence, the foundation of an empire was already being laid. Not on ambition, not on luck, but on the same virtues that had carried him from Seoul to Los Angeles: humility, faith, and work that never asked for recognition. Because before he ever sold fashion, Won Chang learned how to wear dignity. The American dream did not greet Won Chang with open arms. It tested him hard daily and without mercy. When he arrived in Los Angeles in 1981, he was a stranger in a city built for speed. He didn't know the language, didn't understand the culture, and barely earned enough to survive. But where most saw humiliation, he saw purpose. He believed that every hardship was a lesson written by God's hand. He worked 3 jobs to stay afloat. By dawn, he brewed coffee at a small shop downtown. By day, he scrubbed gas station floors until his reflection appeared in the tiles. By night, he cleaned offices collecting cans to make a few extra dollars. There were days when he barely slept, when his hands bled from work and his shoes tore apart. But quitting was never an option. He would whisper prayers under his breath while cleaning each one. A quiet vow: someday I will build something of my own. His wife Jin Suk carried the same fire. At a local beauty salon, she spent hours styling hair for customers who barely looked her in the eye. Every dollar she earned went into savings every night. She returned home with tired hands but steady faith. Together they dreamed not of wealth, but of stability. A small business, maybe something that could give their family dignity. Then one afternoon, as Won was cleaning the gas station, he noticed something that changed everything. The men driving luxury cars, the ones who seemed free, confident, untouchable, all worked in the fashion retail business. They weren't bankers or doctors. They were store owners. That observation lit a spark. He began studying retail, not in classrooms, but in stores. He would visit clothing shops on his lunch break, watch how customers moved, how trends changed, how fabric and price created desire. He wasn't just cleaning anymore. He was observing, learning, preparing. For years, he and Jin Suk saved every possible cent. No vacations, no luxuries, no shortcuts, just discipline and prayer. They believed God helped those who helped themselves, and every sacrifice brought them one step closer to their dream. By 1984, with $11,000 in savings and borrowed hope, they found a small space in a Los Angeles shopping plaza. The rent was cheap. The shelves secondhand, the clothes purchased from liquidation sales. They named the store Fashion 21, not as a business, but as a testimony. Forever young, Jin Suk said, forever blessed. The odds were impossible. But the Changs were used to that. They took turns running the counter, folding clothes, greeting customers. Won handled supply and logistics. Jin Suk curated styles with an instinct that would one day define the brand. The first month they prayed for survival. By the end of the year, they had earned $700,000. Their success wasn't strategy, it was sincerity. They treated every shopper like family, every sale like grace. He had spent years cleaning other people's dreams. Now he was building his own. Won Chang had discovered his calling not to chase fashion, but to clothe hope. And from that humble storefront on Figueroa Street, something larger than profit was beginning to take shape. The first stitches of a global empire sown from faith, exhaustion, and the quiet certainty that no job is too small when purpose is great. The little store on Figueroa Street was never meant to be history. It was meant to be survival. A corner shop for working-class families, selling affordable clothes with a smile. But what Won and Jin Suk Chang built inside those 80 square meters was something far greater, a feeling. While others sold fashion, they sold possibility. The idea that style didn't have to belong only to the rich. Each morning before opening, the couple prayed over the cash register. They believed every customer was a blessing, every sale a small miracle. Jin Suk selected garments by instinct, bright, youthful, fast-moving. Won studied the flow of people through the mall, the rhythm of trends, the heartbeat of the neighborhood. Together, they built a business not from spreadsheets, but from observation and faith. And then something extraordinary happened. Fashion 21, the store that was supposed to struggle, flourished. Teenagers, mothers, students, everyone came. The racks emptied faster than they could restock. In the first year, they earned $700,000. It wasn't luck. It was labor sanctified by belief. They renamed the store Forever 21, a tribute to youth renewal and the faith that had carried them. The name was both prayer and promise to stay young in heart, forever believing. On each shopping bag, Won printed a simple verse. John 3:16. It wasn't marketing, it was gratitude. The Changs didn't hire designers or consultants. They did everything themselves, sourcing pricing, folding greeting customers. They worked 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. When they couldn't afford staff, Jin Suk's relatives came to help. When they ran out of cash, they prayed harder. Every decision, every risk was filtered through conviction. Work hard, stay humble, trust God. Soon, Forever 21 became more than a store. It became a story whispered among immigrants, celebrated by youth, embraced by dreamers. In a world obsessed with brands, it felt human. Affordable fashion became a bridge between cultures, languages, and generations. He had built the business without advertising, without arrogance, just through the quiet power of word of mouth. People didn't just buy clothes. They bought into the energy of a couple who had nothing and gave everything. The small store expanded to another, Los Angeles, then California, then beyond. But the mission never changed. Won often told his staff, "Our clothes must make people feel confident, not just look good." Fashion fades. Faith doesn't. He wasn't chasing trends. He was chasing meaning. And with every folded shirt, every printed bag, every verse of scripture, tucked into a shopping experience, the immigrant janitor who once scrubbed gas station floors was stitching together something no business school could teach, an empire woven from faith, gratitude, and grace. He didn't just sell clothes. He clothed the American dream. By the late 1990s, Forever 21 was no longer just a store. It was a phenomenon, a living, breathing embodiment of youth itself. From Los Angeles to New York, from Mexico City to Manila, the yellow bags with John 3:16 printed beneath them became both fashion statement and symbol of faith. The world saw a retail empire. But for Won and Jin Suk Chang, it was still a mission to give people access to beauty without arrogant style, without excess. Expansion came fast, sometimes too fast. But the Changs moved forward with the same determination that had carried them through poverty. They refused outside investors, refused to go public. Every dollar earned went back into the dream. By 2000, Forever 21 had over 100 stores. By 2010, it had more than 700 worldwide. Their daughters Linda and Esther joined the company, helping bridge the brand into a new generation. To the public, Won was an enigma, a billionaire who still drove his old car, still attended church every Sunday, still prayed before meetings. He believed that success without humility was failure in disguise. His leadership was quiet, his faith constant. Each store opening began with prayer, each milestone a moment of gratitude. He often told his employees, "We are not selling luxury, we are sharing hope. Every customer who walks through our doors should feel loved." That was not a slogan, it was a commandment. Forever 21's formula was simple but radical: fast trends, small prices, relentless speed. The brand captured the heartbeat of a generation that wanted to look rich but live free. The clothes were accessible, the energy youthful, the name eternal. For millions of teenagers around the world, Forever 21 was their first encounter with style, confidence, and self-expression. And yet beneath the success, the Changs never forgot the source of it all. On every shopping bag, millions of them, the same verse appeared: "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son." To them, that wasn't branding, it was testimony. Faith had built the business. Faith would sustain it. He didn't see himself as a mogul, but as a steward, a caretaker of blessings. When asked about his secret, he said, "Hard work and prayer, nothing more." At its peak, Forever 21 generated billions in annual revenue and employed tens of thousands across the world. Yet the man who once scrubbed gas station floors remained grounded. He walked through stores unannounced, talking to cashiers, folding shirts, asking customers if they were happy. To him, humility was not weakness. It was strength, the foundation that had never cracked even as the empire rose higher. Won Chang had done what few dared to believe possible. He turned faith into a global brand and labor into legacy. He built a cathedral of youth out of fabric and light and reminded the world that even in business, grace can be stitched into every seam. By the mid-2010s, the empire that Faith had built began to tremble under the weight of its own success. The world had changed, fashion had moved online, trends shifted overnight, and a new generation no longer shopped in malls but on screens. Yet Forever 21, once the symbol of youth, still lived in the rhythm of yesterday. The bright yellow bags still shone, but the meaning behind them had started to fade. Won Chang felt it long before the headlines did. Stores grew too large, rent too high, shipments too many. The same speed that once made Forever 21 unstoppable was now burning it from within. As competitors like Zara and H&M mastered the digital age, the Changs still trusted instinct over data, prayer over algorithms. Faith had carried them far, but the storm that came was not one you could outwork or outpray. The numbers began to slip. Inventory piled up. Sales slowed. Customers moved online where convenience replaced community. In 2019, after 35 years of relentless growth, Forever 21 filed for bankruptcy. Hundreds of stores shuttered, thousands lost their jobs, and an empire built on perseverance and prayer faced its most painful test. But through the collapse, Won never blamed, never raged. He accepted it with the same grace that had guided him through every season of struggle. "We came with faith," he told his team. "We leave with gratitude." He knew that success was never truly his, only borrowed for a time. Every rise carries its fall, and every fall holds a lesson. For him, the lesson was clear. The American dream is not guaranteed by profit, but sustained by purpose. He walked away from the CEO's chair quietly, without bitterness, without spectacle. No farewell speech, no public apology, just a bowed head and folded hands. For the man who had once worked 3 jobs to survive, loss was not tragedy. It was reminder. He had built an empire from nothing, and he would have been content to return to nothing as long as he kept his faith. And perhaps that is what made his story beautiful. In a world obsessed with endless growth, he understood that all things, even success, must eventually rest. Forever 21 had been more than a company. It was a living parable that dreams stitched with belief can reach the heavens and still one day touch the ground. He didn't lose everything. He simply let go of what was never meant to last. Won Chang stepped away from the empire he built, not defeated, but fulfilled. Because to him, bankruptcy was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of surrender. When the headlines faded and the stores went dark, Won Chang did not chase a comeback. He returned to where it all began, to faith, to family, to the quiet dignity of work without applause. The man who once oversaw a billion-dollar empire now spent his days giving, guiding, and praying. To him, the end of Forever 21 was not a failure. It was a revelation. He had always believed success was borrowed, not owned, a blessing to be used, not worshipped. So when the blessing was taken back, he simply bowed his head. God gave us everything, he told a friend, and he can take it away when it's time. Those words were not defeat. They were peace. Won and Jin Suk remained together, inseparable as ever, partners not just in business, but in belief. They began quietly supporting churches, charities, and immigrant programs, often without attaching their names. Their daughters continued to work in fashion, but their parents' focus had shifted elsewhere, from growth to gratitude, from empire to eternity. He once said, "We built this company through prayer, and when it ended, we prayed again." His legacy is not the brand, not the billions, not the towering stores that once filled America's malls. It is the message behind every one of those yellow shopping bags that faith can build what fear cannot, and humility can carry what pride will break. Forever 21 lives on, reborn while under new management. But its soul, that mixture of ambition and belief, will always belong to the Changs. For countless immigrants, their story remains a sermon written in fabric that you can arrive with nothing and still create something that touches the world. He proved that the American dream was not about accumulation but redemption, not about rising without falling, but rising again after you do. He didn't die a tycoon, he lived as a testimony, because what he built was never just fashion. It was faith, made visible, woven into cotton, carried in scripture, stitched into the memory of every young person who once held that yellow bag and believed they too could become something more. Won Chang never sought to be remembered, but he will be. For in a world that measures success by how high you climb, he reminded us that true success is measured by how deeply you believe. He lost the empire, but he kept his grace. And that in the end is the kind of wealth that never fades, the kind that is and will always be forever.